But of course.
Okay, so good morning everyone. So in the last classes, I guess as far as I remember, we had looked at all these different experiments. First one was to show that it's the root structure which absorbs the water, and we had used this setup with the control experiment. Second one we did was the there is upward conduction of the water. So the aim was to prove that water moves upward from roots towards the leaf side, and the eosin dye solution was used for this specific purpose. And the third experiment I remember we had done was the conduction of water happens through xylem and not through any other tissue. And then we had done this girdling kind of experiment where the all the other tissues except xylem was broken, and the leaves, they were seen like a turgid leaves, or they stand out. And where the xylem was broken, in the second case, the leaves, they wilt because there is no sufficient water that is reaching up to them. So that was the second experiment to prove, or rather the third experiment to prove the conduction of water through xylem. Now the next one is the conduction of the food through phloem tissue. Now again, this experiment will show that the food from the leaves is conducted downward through the phloem in the stem, right? Obviously the phloem is the bidirectional conducting tissue, that is, it can flow downward as well as upward. Xylem is only upward. Now in this case also, cut a ring around the stem of the healthy potted plant, around a thin twig of guava, or you can take any other tree, and dip enough to penetrate the phloem and cambium, but not the xylem. Again, like in the first case, how we had done something similar, and it is shown here. So for example, yeah, this is the twig of a guava tree, and all the other tissues are removed except the xylem. And then yeah, that's the first part. And then it will be seen that the sap starts oozing out from the farther cut margin. Sap is again the inner content of those cells which are present at the cut region, and they will start oozing out, showing that the sap, there is a presence of sap in the peripheral parts, and which will flow downward direction. Why it will flow downward direction? It's a simple reason. Like for example, if you are keeping this plant where the phloem and everything else is cut except the xylem, so the leaves will produce the normal photosynthesis product or the food for the plant, and obviously it has to bring it down. So the moment it is going to bring it down, the cell sap here will receive certain pressure from the top direction, and it will ooze out the cell sap at this position. And that is what you see here actually, or even here, that it becomes a swollen tissue after a while. So that is a point here. So after some weeks, now you let this situation persist for a longer amount of time. So after some weeks, it will be observed that the part of the stem above the ring refers to the cut region, has grown in diameter, and the stem below the girdle, that is below that ring, has stopped growing and may even die when when the stored organic contents of the lower parts, they are exhausted. What this statement means is, so when you keep this plant for some weeks, the food will be synthesized and it will keep flowing down, but it will accumulate at this region because there is no contact of the phloem to the lower portion of this stem. And because it will accumulate here, it will become a swollen tissue. And at the same time, this lower part of the stem, it will utilize all the stored food material. And after the exhaustion of that food material, it will start dying because it is not getting any more food. Remember, only xylem is intact, phloem is broken. So phloem will not, because it's the broken phloem, it will not allow the food to get transferred to the lower portion of the stem. And that is why all the food, all the cell sap will accumulate in this upper portion of the ring above the cut or above the ring. So no. So that is what the fresh and healthy condition of the leaves in this experiment also proves that the leaves, they will continue to get a supply of water. That means xylem is intact, right? So the leaves, they are doing their regular function. All the other functions are regular except the conduction of the phloem in the downward portion of the stem below the cut. That is not function, and that will prove the conduction of the food happens through the phloem tissues. Again, in this case, what you need to show, there is a beaker, a cut twig of the guava tree or any other tree. You cut the portion, only the xylem should be intact. Phloem and all the cortex and epidermis tissue, they will be removed, and you allow the plant to be in the beaker itself, so that the water will get absorbed. The leaves will do a normal function of photosynthesis. It will create, synthesize the food. The food will be flowing downward, and it, because the phloem is broken here, it will keep accumulating, and after few weeks you will see a quite swollen bulb. And you might have seen this phenomena at in some trees, where the tree is, or the tree trunk is cut into half, like only half portion of the tree is cut. You will see at that portion the swelling has happened, and that is mainly because of the storing of this food. That is, it cannot flow down, so it is stored there itself, and that's why that bulge kind of thing occurs. And just in terms of diagram representation, it is shown here more clearly. So that is the conduction of the food through phloem. And this is also called as ringing experiment, because again you create a ring like structure in the stem. So that is why it is called as ringing experiment. Most of the times the question is asked mentioning the ringing experiment. So then you have to remember that it is for the conduction of the food through phloem tissue. Okay, any question here, anyone? So that was the last experiment. Now the last portion or the last topic of this chapter is the forces which contribute to the ascent of sap. Ascent is nothing but the upward movement. We know that ascending moment, right? That is what is ascent, and that is the upward movement of the cell sap. So what are those different forces which acts on the cell sap that will cause the upward movement of this content? First one is obviously root pressure, and we have seen this. It builds up sufficient force so that it will push up the sap in the xylem muscle in the upward direction up to a certain height, and it may be enough for the herbaceous plant, that is the small plants or trees, not trees, the bushes and stuff like that, or the grass kind of plants. For them this might be sufficient, but for bigger trees, you remember, apart from root pressure, there was transpiration pull also, which was responsible. So for herbaceous type of plant, root pressure is good enough to push the cell sap in the upward direction through the xylem vessels. Then capillarity. Capillarity is nothing but the capillary action, right? And again, I assume you would have studied this in physics or chemistry, which means because of the narrow diameter of these xylem vessels, they cause the water from a lower level to rise to fill up the vacuum created by the loss of water. And this is specifically due to the transpiration process. So what this means is, transpiration will happen, that space will become like a vacuum, and it will pull up more water through the like bottom of the plant, that is from the root side. And due to the thinner diameter or narrow diameter of the capillaries or the xylem vessels, it will create that capillary action, so that more and more water is pulled up. A simple experiment, like you can take a capillary tube and put it in a beaker filled with water, and the moment you keep that capillary inside this beaker, you can see the beaker level, or sorry, the level of the water in the beaker will be at lower layer, and the water level in the capillary will be just above the water level from the beaker. So that is specifically called as capillary action. Why does that happen? You can refer to the physics textbook. Due to the surface tension phenomena. So that is the capillarity present in the this tube-like structure. So narrower the diameter of the tube, greater will be the height of this absorption rate. So wait, I just need to correct this spelling. So narrower the diameter of the tube, greater will be the height of the water rising in these tubes, and ultimately the exerting force is called as capillary force. So the action is called as capillary action. So that way, due to the narrow diameter of these xylem vessels, the water moves upward in the capillary action manner, and the force which acts on these capillaries of the xylem vessel is called as capillary force. Then third one, which acts in contribution to the upward movement of the cell sap, that is transpiration pull. Again, this we have seen quite often due to the upward movement, due to the transpiration, that is water moving out of the leaf structure, water gets pulled up due to the suction force that is generated. And in this case, the water has a tendency to remain joined. And like I said, like it's not like let's say few mLs of water is going out, and then there is a gap of the air. That does not happen. The water moves in the smooth stream of like what we say water vapor through the transpiration process. So that is a continuous movement. In short, there is no break or there is no air gap in between those xylem vessels, and that is what is referring to the cohesion. And thus to produce a continuous column or continuous stream like function on water through the stem or throughout the xylem tissue. So that is the transpiration pull, and this is majorly because of the suction force that is developed due to the water moving out of those leaf structure. Then adhesion. Now one is cohesion, that is between water molecule. So two water molecule attracting each other, that is cohesion. Adhesion is water molecule attracting the surface cells or the surface cells attracting the water molecule, either ways, that is adhesion. So adhesion is between two different molecules, right? And cohesion is between similar molecule, right? We say cohesive forces again in case of physics or chemistry. You talk of cohesive forces, that is between the same solvent molecules. And adhesion we talk of between the solute and the solvent, or between the two different solute molecules. So that is adhesive force. So this adhesion, it causes the water to stick the surface of the cells, and thus drawing more and more water molecule from the lower leaf surface, and that way they will lose the water through the during the transpiration process. So that is adhesion, and this pulling again will create more suction force. Again, it will create more transpiration, and that way it will lead to more water evaporation, and that will also create the ascent of sap. And this is specifically observed in the pine trees, which do not have enough root pressure, but still there is more of adhesion, and that way the more water is being pulled out, and that way the upward movement of the cell sap keeps on happening. So there is root pressure, which is building a pressure due to the more absorption of the water. Capillarity, due to the capillary force or due to the capillary action, that is the narrow diameter of the xylem vessel, water moves upward. Transpiration pull, transpiration keeps on happening, suction force is generated, and then the water gets pulled up, that is transpiration, and that is keeping the cohesive forces intact. So that is the water molecule, they attract each other, so there is a continuous stream. And the adhesion, that is the attraction between the surface cells of the xylem or of the plant tissue with the water. So that is the adhesive force. that will allow the more water movement. Now, if you want to imagine these adhesive forces, you know the process of osmosis, right? That is something like adhesive force. So, you know, let's say in the root hair cell, there is more concentration of the solute, and outside the root hair, that is in the soil, there is less concentration and more water. So the water gets absorbed inside the root due to these adhesion forces, and then it keeps moving through the xylem tissue. So that is nothing but the adhesion. So these are four, and then there are few more. That is the downward movement of the sap. Now this downward movement of the sap is relatively simple, as it says. So the food that is manufactured in the leaves, right? You know, the glucose or the starch that is stored in the leaves, that is dissolved in water, and then it moves downward because it has to conduct. Just in the experiment that we saw, there is a downward movement of the food that keeps on happening, and then it flows down mainly due to the force of gravity. Now you may not imagine as the force of gravity, but it's simpler downward movement, you can say. And due to that, there is again the pushback given to the content that is present on the lower side. You can simply imagine, if you are pushing the air in the balloon at one corner, the other corner air moves to the other side, right? It's simpler movement in the plant itself. If you are pushing the food with the water downside, obviously whatever content is there at the bottom will start moving up. So that is again contributing to the ascent of sap. So these are the five main factors which contribute to the ascent of sap. And then there are definitions of cohesion and adhesion which are written here, because I have seen some of the question papers asking this definition. So cohesion is the force of attraction between molecules of the same substance. Like I said, between water molecule. So that is the cohesion force. And adhesion is the force of attraction between water molecules of different substances. Like for example, cell wall and the water molecule, that is different in terms of their composition. So ultimately they are different substances, and that is called as adhesion. Okay, any question here in these forces which contributes to the ascent of sap? There has been quite a few times that these questions have been asked. Specifically, what are the different forces? Enlist the forces acting for the ascent of sap, or explain one particular action, or even the diagrams are given, and then like the students have been asked to explain the what is the phenomena shown. Then you have to write, okay, it is ascent of sap, and then you have to write the different factors which contribute there. So there are like various such questions that can be asked in this topic. And of course these definitions, like what is capillarity, what is transpiration pool, what is cohesion, and what is adhesion, and so on. Okay, so I assume there are no questions from your side. So I have questions from my side. So I assume you have understood some topic. Tanisha is laughing, and so am I. So let me ask few questions to you, so we'll get an idea of how much have we retained in the class. Someone just disappeared from the class. Okay, let me start with Sumit. Sumit, Mr. Sumit Chopra.
Yes, sir.
Can you answer for the first question? How is the root hair structurally adapted for the absorption of the water from soil? You need not answer in a literally how you write in the exam. Whatever your understanding is, you can just share.
It covers the large surface area, like, so it can absorb more water.
Right, that is one factor.
Then it can like easily penetrate like soil, like cover a larger area.
I am not sure what you mean to say there.
So like roots hair are very spread out, right? Like roots are very spread out. Like they can even go through cement, like if it's for longer duration.
Right, hair cells, that is.
I don't know.
Anyone else wants to add to this answer? Anyone else? Anyone else? So there is surface area as one factor. Second one was the concentration of the cell sap, right? Due to that cell sap concentration, osmosis keeps on happening, right? And that way the water will keep moving inside, and that is ultimately leading to the absorption of water from the soil. So you have to remember these two main factors. Obviously, the root hairs, they have adapted themselves in such a way that they will increase the surface area. So that part you can explain even little more detail. Okay, now the second question, Aryan. Root hairs become flaccid when fertilizers are added to the moist soil around.
Maybe the fertilizers contain a good amount of salts, which would be less inside the roots.
Fertilizers actually, they don't contain salt. The fertilizer, these are certain chemical molecules itself. Like, let's say, for example, phosphates or nitrates.
So phosphates are also salts, right?
Oh, you are referring to those salts. Yeah, correct. Then you are right.
So because
the NaCl.
No. I generally use the term.
My bad. Accept. So yeah, that's right. So more salt.
So then the concentration of salt is higher outside, so water will flow out and then it becomes flaccid.
Yes, very simple. What do you mean by transpiration pool? Neeraj?
The pool which a plant experiences when it transpires, like when it's giving out water. I think that when a
Yes.
plant is giving out water,
There
the
are
pool
certain keywords that we need to use here. Do you remember any of the keywords that we use in the transpiration pool? So the force or the suction force that is generated. So that is the keyword there. Yeah, and then you can explain it around. So we all know what transpiration is. That is the movement of water in the form of vapor through the leaf. And the suction force or the force which is generated due to that transpiration is called as transpiration pool. So see, you can explain in like a common language sometimes, but then keywords are very important. So that's where you need to mention these keywords. Then give at least 3 uses of water to green plant. Okay, that I can skip. It's very simple. Grapes, they shrink when immersed in very strong sugar solution. And explain. Maybe Yati. Yati?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain this question or can you answer this question? Grapes shrink when immersed in a very strong sugar solution.
Okay. Can I think about it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, give me 10 seconds.
Let her. Maybe.
Yeah. I don't remember the condition exactly, but it's like basically osmosis takes place. So the the liquid you have in the grape, like all the juicy part of the grape, it moves to the sugar solution because that's in no way. Yeah, yeah, right too. Because that's sweeter than the grape. So
Yes, but again, not completely correct. Means you are right.
it's yeah. It's so yeah, it's like moving from a higher no from a lower con no wait from a higher concentration. So it has more liquid and the solution has more sweet. So wait, it's hyper no, I don't remember. I don't remember. Sorry. It's hypertonic, no?
Okay, so like if you remember, I had said it, we have to always give a context. When we say hypertonic, what is hypertonic? We have to mention it. Is it inside the grape hypertonic or outside the grape hypertonic?
It's inside the grape.
No, if you read the question, it's itself says so.
Right.
Maybe let me ask someone else. Anyone else? Akshay?
Sir, I guess the phenomena over here is known as exosmosis. So, what happens over here? Osmosis takes place from there is more sugar outside the grape than inside the grape. Hello. Yeah. So, and there is more water inside the grape than outside.
Comparatively.
Maybe the water comparatively, yes. So by osmosis, to make that by osmosis there is an osmotic pressure developed and the water inside the grapes moves out, which is why it gets shrunken.
Correct. So a simple mechanism, even if you mention that it is an exoosmosis process, whosoever corrects your paper will easily get an idea. Okay, this fellow or this person has got some idea. So what happens is, outside the grape there is a very strong sugar solution. That means outside it is hypertonic, inside grape it is hypotonic. So that means the water will move from the dilute solution that is inside the grape to a concentrated solution that is outside the grape. Or in other way, the water will move from the dilute solution to concentrated solution. That is the process again of osmosis. That is the only movement of water. So Yati, one mistake that can happen there is, like we mention of the grape juice movement. It is not just the grape juice that moves, but it's simply water. Yeah, that is moving out of the cells or out of the grape here.
Yes, sir.
So that way the grape will shrink and the water is moving out of the grape, so obviously it has to shrink, and that is what is the reason. And then you have to mention of the osmosis, exoosmosis, the lower concentration, higher concentration, hypotonic. So that way if you use this keyword and explain, it is better. Next, what is the significance of diffusion? Anusha.
Diffusion is the movement of particles from higher concentration to lower concentration.
Okay, that is the explanation of diffusion. What is the significance? Where is it used in plants?
I'm not sure.
Well, you know it already. We discussed it quite often. You just have to get there. It's a very simple phenomenon that you know for sure. I am sure you know it. And everyone knows it, I guess. What happens to the food once it is synthesized in the leaf?
It travels to other parts of the
What is that?
movement of the molecules.
That is what is diffusion, no? Like wherever the food is stored more, that is the leaf, from there, that is the higher concentration of glucose, to rest of the parts of the plant where there is lower concentration of this glucose, it is moving downward. So that is diffusion process.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So remember, all of you, these are very simpler phenomena. The question might look complicated or you might think on a tangent direction, but the questions, they are not that difficult. At least for this chapter, the questions might be twisted around, but the answers are very, very simple. So you just understand the phenomena and you will get there. The second last question, the few RBCs, they were kept in 3 test tubes. Now this is again very interesting question. So a few RBCs, that is red blood cells, they were kept in 3 test tubes containing isotonic, hypotonic and hypertonic solution. What will be the expected observations after few hours? And you have to explain why. Let me ask, who is it? Shantanu.
Isotope is same, right?
Yeah. You want to try answer?
No, I mean isotope. It will answer. I don't know.
Mr. Shantanu? Have you? Oh, I can't hear you. You have unmuted, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, now can you hear me, sir?
Yes, now I can.
Yeah, so in the isotonic solution, the shape and size of the cell. So isotonic solution in the isotonic solution, I guess the shape of the cell of the RBC will be constant because there is no lose or gain in the context of water because there is no higher concentration or lower concentration.
Right.
And then in the hypotonic solution, the cell will swell up because what will happen is there will be more more water inside the cell than the solution because there will be more uh, what do you call concentration outside. So that's why what will happen is it will move from higher concentration to lower concentration. And then in the hypertonic solution, it will shrink because, as Akshay said, it will be exosmosis. So basically, it will move from a lower pressure, lower concentration to higher concentration.
Correct. So again, just to revise what Shantanu said, thank you, Shantanu. So when RBCs they are kept in isotonic solution, there will be no change in the shape because inside the RBCs and outside, that is where these RBCs are kept, the concentration or tonicity is same. So there will be no water movement. So the shape and size will not change at all in our isotonic solution. In hypotonic solution, that is when the RBCs inside will have higher concentration of solute, outside it's hypotonic, that means lower concentration of solute, and that way the water will move inside the RBCs, right? That is the dilute solution to concentrated solution, that is from outside RBCs to the inside of them, and that way the cells will increase in size, that is the swelling up of the cells, or you can say the RBCs they will become turgid. Either ways, whatever you want to say, but these keywords they have to be mentioned there. And in hypertonic solution, that is inside the RBCs there is lower concentration of solute, outside the RBCs it is hypertonic, that means higher concentration of solute. So the water from inside RBCs will move outside, and that way RBC they will shrink, so that their size will reduce, and that is the explanation. And again you can add those terms. If the water is moving outside, that is shrinking of the RBCs, that is exoosmosis. If the water is moving inside RBCs, that is endoosmosis. And isotonic solution they will have no change. And even if you draw the simple diagrams showing that the cell size increased or decreased in isotonic, hypotonic, whatever it is, there that will also explain it quite a lot. And the last question, maybe Ratul.
Yes, sir.
The last question, why the grass in your lawn becomes greener if you add a little fertilizer to it, but it dies if you add a lot of fertilizer?
Yeah, so I'm not so sure. So as in the earlier question, if you add a fertilizer to it, because of the salts in it, it shrinks a little because it exosmosis.
Right.
So
So the water moves from where to where?
from the roots to the soil.
Soil, correct. So that way the plant or the grass is not getting sufficient water if it is in excess, and that way the plants or these grasses they will die. That is the simpler answer.
And if you add a little fertilizer to it, I don't know why it will get. It may be having. I don't know why it gets greener. So.
Greener because it will have a proper nutrition. So the fertilizer is helping the plant to do more and more photosynthesis. So it will grow, it will become green. That's the simple reason there. Okay, so I guess that's it from my side. So this way we have finished and we concluded this chapter. If there are any questions, oh, what is this? Yeah.